Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something pretty big today. Generative AI security. Now, before you tune out thinking, oh, this is just tech stuff, hold on. This affects all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not talking about some far-off sci-fi scenario here. Generative AI is already out there, woven into so much of what we do, and its use is only going to explode, so those security implications, they're here right now.
You got it. And to really wrap our heads around this, we're going straight to the source. A Google Cloud blog post written by their top security experts. These are the folks on the front lines
Yeah.
dealing with this stuff day in and day out. So their insights.
Yeah.
Gold, pure gold. One stat that really blew me away. Get this, over half of the inputs they studied being fed into these AI systems
Yeah.
contain sensitive info. We're talking names, addresses, even financial data.
It makes you think, doesn't it,
Uh,
how fast this tech has taken off, often without those security measures in place. And remember, generative AI, at its core, it's all about processing information, manipulating it. So the potential for misuse.
Yeah. Exactly why we're here, to break down those common security mistakes companies are making. And luckily, this blog post lays out 5 key areas. So we'll be discussing weak AI governance, the whole bad data problem. Then there's the risks that come with excessive access, the hidden vulnerabilities you inherit from pre-built models. And finally, the misconception that only AI facing the public is a threat.
Each one of those, it's a potential point of failure. And it's not just businesses at risk, it's all of us. Everyone whose data is being used by these systems.
Let's kick things off with something that might sound a little boring, but trust me, it's foundational. AI governance. Now, this blog post points out these 2 extremes we're seeing. On one hand, you've got companies going full speed ahead with AI. Employees can use whatever tools they want, even consumer apps for business.
Which is, to put it mildly, asking for trouble. You're basically trading security for a little bit of convenience, a very bad trade. Then you've got the opposite. Companies lock down so tight that employees get frustrated and turn to what's called shadow AI. They find workarounds, bypass all the rules, using AI without any oversight at all.
So it's like no matter which way you go, you're setting yourself up for problems. Neither extreme really works, and both create massive security risks. What I don't get is, why is good AI governance so hard to get right?
Well, it's not as simple as, writing up a list of rules and calling it a day. It's about building a culture of responsibility around AI, meaning you need clear guidelines, processes for how AI is developed, deployed, monitored within an organization. And this is key. It can't just be IT and security folks. Everyone needs to be involved, from your data scientists to legal experts, even business leaders.
It's like creating a whole new way of communicating, right?
Right.
A language everyone in the company understands when it comes to AI.
Precisely. And that language, it needs to be based on transparency, accountability, and ethical data handling. Without that shared understanding, you're going to have inconsistencies, security gaps, and eventually, you're going to lose trust, both from employees and your customers.
And that loss of trust, it's not just some abstract concept, is it? I mean, especially as people become more aware of how their data is used by these systems.
Absolutely not. We've seen it happen, high-profile cases where companies take a major reputational damage, even financial losses, all because of AI governance failures. So it's not just about, avoiding hackers. It's about responsible, ethical use of AI, which builds trust and protects everyone involved.
Makes you think about that survey, right? Almost 75% of organizations are planning on putting together dedicated AI governance teams. Seems like companies are starting to realize this isn't optional, it's a must-have.
It's a good sign, for sure. Because having a team focused solely on AI governance sends a strong message. This organization takes these issues seriously, and it allows them to build up expertise, create a framework that fits their industry, their risk tolerance, all of that.
Good point. It underscores that AI governance isn't just about checking boxes or compliance. It's about proactive risk management, making sure AI is used in a way that aligns with the company's values and their long-term goals, too.
Exactly, and when you do it right, good governance can actually help drive innovation. It gives you that framework for exploring new ways to use AI while keeping the risks low and making sure those uses are ethical and beneficial.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. AI governance is vital. But let's dig into those specific mistakes companies are making. Next up is something that seems pretty obvious, but it trips people up all the time. Bad data. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
And with AI, that's especially true. These systems, they're only as good as the data they learn from. But it's not just about having tons of data, it's about the quality of that data. And that's where a lot of companies fall short.
So when we talk about bad data in the context of AI, what are we really talking about? What are the warning signs?
A few things to watch out for. First, is the data accurate and complete? Are there errors, missing values, inconsistencies? Even small mistakes can snowball in an AI system, leading to inaccurate predictions, unreliable outcomes.
And it's not just the data itself, right? It's also about how it's collected and labeled.
You got it. If that collection process is biased, say certain groups are overrepresented or underrepresented, well, that bias gets baked right into the AI. And labeling, just as important. If those labels are inconsistent, inaccurate, the AI can't learn the right patterns, can't make good decisions.
It makes you think about things like hiring, loan applications, all that.
Right.
AI is being used more and more to automate those decisions. So if the data used to train those systems is biased, it could lead to discrimination?
It's a valid concern, and it really underscores the need for robust data governance practices. Things like quality checks, bias detection, and having strategies to mitigate that bias. The bottom line is, the data used to train AI has to be representative, accurate, and free of harmful biases.
And this data governance, this isn't a one-time thing, is it?
Nope, not at all. It's got to be an ongoing process. Data is constantly changing, new data coming in, being integrated. So you have to constantly monitor for those biases, data quality issues. And it's not just about tech solutions. It's about human oversight, ethical considerations, making sure AI is used fairly and responsibly.
All right, we've covered AI governance, the dangers of bad data. Let's tackle the next mistake on our list. Excessive access. Now, this one might seem a little counterintuitive. Wouldn't giving an AI tool access to more data make it, more powerful and effective?
You might think so, yeah. But in reality, you're creating a major security risk. Think about it. A company gives its internal chatbot access to every single piece of data they have. Sounds convenient, right? The chatbot can answer any question, pull up any document, streamline everything. But there's a downside to all that convenience.
It's like you're giving someone the keys to the kingdom without thinking about the potential consequences, right?
Exactly. Over-provisioned access, it's a huge risk, like leaving your front door wide open and just hoping nobody with bad intentions walks in. And this applies to those internal AI tools just as much as the ones facing the public.
Okay, starting to see why this is such a big deal, but break it down for me. What are the actual dangers of giving these AI tools more access than they need?
Well, those consequences can be pretty serious. The biggest one, increased risk of data breaches. If an attacker gets into an AI tool that has access to a wide range of data, they could potentially steal sensitive info, manipulate data, even sabotage critical systems.
And I bet it'd be way harder to contain a breach in that situation.
Right.
Like the AI tool has access to everything, so it's like trying to plug a hole in a dam when the water's already pouring through.
Exactly. And it's not just about those external threats either. We got to think about insider threats too. A disgruntled employee, someone malicious who's already inside the network. They could easily take advantage of an AI tool with too much access and cause a lot of damage.
So even if the AI tool itself is super secure, it becomes a vulnerability if it basically has the keys to the whole kingdom, right?
Precisely. And then there's accidental data exposure.
Mm.
Even employees with good intentions, they can accidentally reveal sensitive info if they're using an AI tool that has access to more than it should.
You give me an example. Like, how would that actually happen?
Sure. Let's say there's a company with an internal chatbot. It's designed to help employees with, HR-related questions. This chatbot has access to tons of data, employee salaries, performance reviews, even personal info. Now, imagine an employee asks a seemingly harmless question like, who are the top performers in marketing? The chatbot, it's not programmed to understand how sensitive that info is. So it might just spit out a list of names, their performance ratings, salary data, the whole thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be bad news. Not just for privacy, but legally, too. So it's not just about stopping hackers. It's also about making sure well-meaning employees don't accidentally reveal sensitive information.
Exactly. And that's why it's crucial to have those strict access controls in place, based on the principle of least privilege. Basically, you only give AI tools access to the data they absolutely need to do their job.
So it's about compartmentalizing the data,
Yeah.
right? Making sure each tool has its own little sandbox to play in.
Exactly. And those access controls, they need to be reviewed and updated regularly. As the AI's tasks change, as its data needs change. You also need clear policies about data handling, data access, and training for employees so they understand just how important data security and privacy are.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've talked about weak AI governance, bad data, and now this excessive access issue. Let's move on to the fourth mistake, which I find really interesting. Neglecting inherited vulnerabilities. This blog post makes a great comparison. It's like buying a used car. You might not know its full history, and there could be problems hiding under the hood.
It's a perfect analogy. When companies use those pre-built or fine-tuned AI models, they're essentially buying a used car. These models are often built on top of what are called foundation models, which are massive, pre-trained AI systems developed by someone else. And just like that used car, those foundation models can have some baggage.
So what kind of baggage are we talking about here?
Well, one thing is the risk of inheriting vulnerabilities. Those foundation models could have security flaws. Maybe they weren't caught during development, or maybe they pop up later as new attack vectors are discovered. And if a company builds its own AI model on top of a vulnerable foundation model, those vulnerabilities are passed down, like a genetic predisposition.
So you can't just trust that the foundation model is secure. Companies need to do their homework, like getting a car history report before they buy.
Exactly. They need to really scrutinize where that foundation model came from, how it was developed, any known security issues. They should also demand transparency from the developers, make sure they understand the model's limitations and potential risks.
And this lack of transparency, that seems to be a big worry in the industry. This blog post mentions that over a third of IT professionals are most concerned about not knowing how these AI models are built, not knowing what data was used to train them. It's like buying a used car, but not being allowed to look under the hood.
It's a valid concern for sure. Without transparency, it's tough to assess the risks of using these models and tough to implement the right security measures. And this is where good AI governance comes back into play. Organizations need clear policies and procedures for vetting third-party AI models, making sure they meet their security and ethical standards.
It seems like there's this tension between wanting to innovate and needing to be secure. Companies want to move fast, use the latest AI advancements, but they also need to be careful, not just rush in without thinking about the risks.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this is where security professionals are so important. They need to be involved right from the start, not just brought in later to clean up the mess. They need to work closely with developers, data scientists, business leaders, everyone, to find that balance between innovation and security.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where you're not holding back progress, but you're also not being reckless.
Yeah. Exactly. It's about a calculated approach, understanding the risks and putting the right security measures in place. Mitigate those risks without unnecessarily slowing things down.
Okay, so we've covered weak AI governance, bad data, excessive access, and now these inherited vulnerabilities. That brings us to the fifth and final mistake, and this one might be the most common. Assuming the risks only apply to AI that's facing the public, it's easy to think, oh, if it's just internal behind our company firewalls, it's safe. But as we've seen with these other mistakes, that's a dangerous assumption.
It really is. And I think this misconception comes from how we used to think about security. The focus was on protecting those external facing systems from outside attackers, but AI changes the game. We're dealing with systems that are more and more interconnected, data flowing between internal and external environments. And that means internal AI tools can be just as vulnerable as those public facing ones.
So it's not just about keeping the bad guys out, right? It's about protecting against threats that might already be inside the organization.
Exactly. And we've touched on some of those, like disgruntled employees or accidental data exposure. But there's another piece of the puzzle that often gets overlooked: network vulnerabilities.
You mean like, even if an AI tool is only accessible within the company's network, that network itself could be compromised?
Precisely. A lot of companies have older systems, outdated security protocols. They were never designed to handle the complexities of AI. And attackers, they're always finding new ways to exploit those weaknesses. They get a foothold and then move laterally within the network. So even if an AI tool is tucked away behind firewalls, it's still vulnerable if the network itself is compromised.
So it's like having a top-of-the-line security system in your home, but leaving a window open.
Perfect analogy. And it shows why it's so important to have a holistic approach to security. One that considers not just the AI tools themselves, but the whole network environment they operate in.
So what does that actually look like? What should companies be doing to secure those internal AI systems?
Well, a lot of the things we've already talked about apply. Start with good AI governance, clear policies and procedures for data access, security protocols, incident response. You also need robust access controls, data encryption, and regular security assessments. Find and fix those potential vulnerabilities.
And we can't forget about the human element, right?
Yeah.
Even with the best tech, security is only as strong as the people using it.
Absolutely. Employee training and awareness are key. People need to understand the risks of AI, how to handle sensitive data, how to spot and report potential threats. It's about building a culture of security throughout the entire organization.
So it's a multifaceted approach, right? Tech, processes, and people all working together. And it sounds like it requires a shift in how we think about security, recognizing that it's an ongoing process, not a one-time fix.
Exactly. I like to think of it as a journey. Security isn't a destination you reach, it's a constant process of improving and adapting. AI keeps evolving, new threats keep popping up. So organizations need to constantly be learning, adapting, refining their security.
That's a great point. And it brings us back to that idea we talked about earlier. AI security isn't about being afraid or stopping innovation. It's about being responsible, enabling innovation in a safe way, finding ways to use the amazing power of AI while managing the risks and protecting ourselves and our data.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so we've broken down these 5 major security mistakes companies are making with generative AI. We've talked about the bigger picture, what this all means for the future. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's zoom out for a minute, look at the big picture. What does all this mean for the future of AI security? What are the trends, the challenges we need to be thinking about?
Well, one thing that really jumps out at me is the speed, how fast everything is changing. What we're talking about today, it could be totally different in a year, even 6 months.
It's like trying to hit a moving target.
It really is. Generative AI is evolving so quickly, and those security threats, they're right there with it. We're seeing new attacks, new vulnerabilities, and those attacks, they're getting more and more sophisticated.
So it's like a constant arms race. Security professionals always trying to stay one step ahead.
That's a good way to put it. And it shows why it's so important to keep learning, keep adapting in this field. Security pros need to be up to date on the latest threats, and they need to be developing new skills, new strategies to fight back.
Sounds like a tough job, honestly.
Yeah.
As generative AI keeps evolving, what should those security professionals be focusing on?
One area that's becoming really crucial is adversarial machine learning. It's where attackers specifically target AI systems, trying to mess with their behavior or steal sensitive data.
Okay, give me an example. How would that actually work?
Sure, imagine an attacker wants to poison the data that's used to train an AI model. They sneakily inject bad data into that training set, which makes the model learn the wrong patterns, make bad predictions, and that could be a disaster, especially in fields like healthcare, finance, even self-driving cars.
That is pretty scary. So security pros need to be ready for those kinds of attacks, and they need ways to defend against them.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting the AI models themselves, it's about securing the whole process, from collecting the data to processing it to training the model, deploying it. Any step along the way could be a target.
So it feels like security is just becoming more and more complex. And as those AI systems get more interconnected, it's not just about one piece, it's about the whole system, right?
Absolutely. And that means we need to think about security in a new way, a more holistic approach, one that's collaborative. It's not just about building walls around individual systems. It's about understanding how they all work together, finding those weak points, and figuring out how to minimize the risks.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about the people and the processes too.
Exactly. Security, it's a team effort. You need those security pros, developers, data scientists, business leaders, even policymakers, all working together.
And as AI gets more powerful, those ethical implications become even more important, don't they?
Yeah.
We got to make sure these technologies are being used for good, for the benefit of everyone.
That's a crucial point. And it brings us back to AI governance. We need clear ethical guidelines for how AI is developed and used, and we need to hold companies accountable for what their AI systems do.
This reminds me of what we talked about before, that shadow AI. Employees going around the rules, using AI without any supervision. What happens if those employees start using AI for unethical stuff?
That's a real danger, and it shows why we need a culture of ethics and responsibility when it comes to AI. It's not just about having rules, it's about making sure everyone understands them and follows them, and it's about giving employees the power to speak up if they see something wrong.
So it's about an environment where people feel safe raising concerns and where ethics are part of every step of AI development.
Exactly, and this is where leadership is so important. Leaders need to set the tone, make it clear that ethical AI matters, and create a culture where doing the right thing is valued.
Wow. It's a lot to consider, and it can feel kind of overwhelming, especially for those of us who aren't security experts. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? What can they do to stay informed and protect themselves in this constantly changing landscape?
Well, the most important thing is to stay informed. Read about AI security, follow the experts, talk about these issues. The more you understand the risks and challenges, the better decisions you can make.
That's great advice. And it reminds us that we all have a part to play in shaping the future of AI. It's not just something we leave to the experts.
Absolutely. We need to demand transparency from companies about how they're using AI, how they're protecting our data. We need to support organizations that are doing AI ethically and hold those who aren't accountable. And we need to be smart, critical consumers of those AI-powered products and services.
Those are all great points. Seems like the conversation about AI security is just getting started.
It is, and it's a conversation we need to have as a society. AI has so much potential to change our lives in good ways and bad. It's up to us to make sure it's used for good, that we manage those risks and get the most out of the benefits.
Well, we've covered a lot today. 5 big security mistakes, the bigger picture, and what we can all do to navigate this new world. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just this. AI security, it's not about being afraid or stopping progress. It's about empowering ourselves, learning, asking the right questions, and pushing for responsible, ethical use of this powerful technology. The future of AI is in our hands. It's up to us to shape it wisely.
That's a perfect way to end our deep dive. Thanks for joining us today as we explore generative AI security. And to our listeners, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay safe out there.